Right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great to see so many people here for this session on innovation in the Government Communications Service. My name is Simon Bohr. I'm Chief Executive of UK Government Communications, and I'm joined on stage by Dr. Amanda Svensson, who heads up our Applied Data and Insight team and has been absolutely integral to so much of the work that we have done on innovation. And what we want to do this morning is run you through, firstly, our thinking about innovation, how we approached it, and actually, I think how we approached it in maybe a slightly different way to what we thought we would initially do. And then Amanda's going to talk through a specific example of that in practice through particularly the new AI tool that we have introduced, GCS Assist, which is the world's first public sector communications AI tool and the first and only AI tool that has been approved for rollout across UK government, which we're enormously proud of. So let me take you back, first of all, to May 2022, when we published our 3-year functional strategy for the future of government communications. And we recognized at that point that communications is changing really quickly. And the skills that government communicators need for the future, even for today, are very different to the skills and the practices that they needed when they started their careers. Print circulation down by 2/3 since 2000. We're not reaching the public through government digital channels. The amount of money available for paid advertising has reduced by more than half since 2010. So we need to make sure that government communicators have got the skills, the tools, the practices, the techniques to be able to innovate and use new technology in service of the public. And we started off by asking lots of people externally, which are the great companies or the great organizations that have successfully created innovative practices? What is it that makes an innovative company compared to one that isn't innovative? And the number one thing that I was told was, you can't be innovative if you don't have an innovative culture. It all starts with culture. And at one level, that's like an absolutely, I'm sure, accurate answer, but it's also not particularly helpful when you're kind of working out, well, what should we do over the next 3 years to spur innovation? Because lots of people said, you don't have an innovative culture and that's what you need. But I think our view was, well, the way to create an innovative culture is to start doing some things that are innovative, and then hopefully that will start to build a culture of innovation. So we identified 4 things that we felt we needed to do to be more innovative. How could we encourage innovation? How could we create that culture where people felt that it was okay to be innovative? Secondly, how could we identify innovation, both the best innovative ideas from the private sector and from other countries, but also actually the best innovative ideas that were already happening in government communications, but other people didn't know about and weren't scaling elsewhere? Thirdly, when we'd identified great innovation outside government, how could we actually test it and bring it in and see whether it worked within government? And then finally, how could we scale that innovation so that rather than just existing in one department or arm's length body, we're understanding both what worked, but just as importantly, what didn't work, and we weren't making the same mistakes again. And underpinning all of that, we felt we needed clear ethical standards for the use of innovation given our core public service role. So I think we quickly realized that there is no silver bullet for innovation. There's not one thing that you can do to create innovation within your organization. And for us, we started to kind of, as we did more work on this, chunk this up into what we described as our innovation ecosystem. What were the different things we were going to do that hopefully, if we got it right, would add up to a more innovative culture? And across the top here are the things that we did to try and spur innovation, not at the central GCS team, but right across government. This was about sending signals to people who were part of the government communication service that we wanted them to be more innovative. There was an expectation they'd be innovative. We would have their backs if they tried new things and it didn't work. So we created a virtual innovation hub working with a lot of our private sector suppliers to be able to get particularly small and medium-sized businesses to pitch in 15 minutes what were their ideas for how their products or services could make government comms better. And we did it in collaboration with Facebook, Snapchat, Google, some big tech companies who we thought, A, would be interested themselves, but also we thought it's a much more attractive prospect for the SME to not just pitch to government, to be able to pitch to those tech companies at the same time. And I'll talk about some specific examples that came out of that. Secondly, we created a competition, a Dragon's Den style competition for anybody within GCS to pitch to us their idea for how to improve government communications. Part of that was about identifying great internal ideas, but part of it was about demonstrating to people that actually this was an organization that encouraged innovation and trying to create that culture. And then one of the things that we quickly found was that people said to us, look, the spend controls that you operate require us, when we are investing money in communications campaigns, to demonstrate that those campaigns have been efficient and effective in the past. And that's stifling innovation, because actually, rather than being encouraged to try something new, what you're saying to us is you can only try things that have been proven to be effective before. So we thought, actually, that's kind of a fair criticism. And originally we thought, well, should we change that and give some kind of leeway for innovative projects where we're not going to apply the same standards? And then we thought, no, actually, we can go one better. Rather than just lifting the barrier, why don't we actually use the spend control to incentivize innovation? So instead, what we did was say, do you know what? In future, the expectation is that when you're spending money on a comms campaign, 90% might be focused on models that have been proven to be efficient and effective, but 10% we're going to actively say to you, try something new that you have never done before in your organization. Doesn't necessarily need to be new to government, might be. Doesn't need to be world leading, but try something new, and we will not hold you to account for that money not being spent effectively, as long as it's something we can test and learn from and scale across GCS. So we tried to use the barrier, actually, and twist it round to make it an incentive. Then we realized there were three big things that were big opportunities for government communications that actually had to be delivered centrally. They were just too big in nature of the projects to expect everybody to take them forward individually. So we identified a custom large language model for GCS as being a real area of opportunity, and Amanda will talk more about where that led us to. We identified audience segmentation, being able to use data and AI to really understand audiences more effectively, and we had a very early pilot with Every Mind Matters that served adverts on social media channels, not on the basis of what we usually do, which is demographics, but instead serving adverts where people had exhibited signs of mental distress or ill health, to be able to try and reach people who were most in need of support most directly. And we found that that had a 45% increase in the people who were developing a mental health plan. And finally, personalization, using AI chatbots to be able to provide a much more personalized experience. And again, an early pilot there at the MOD with Royal Navy identified that not only did having an AI chatbot reduce call center volumes through the recruitment process by 65%, but actually people were asking different questions, more open questions than perhaps they might ask a human being, such as, what's it like to be a Muslim in the Royal Navy? And so we kind of realized that there was a real opportunity there to really encourage openness and help people to understand whether roles were right for them. And then all of that, we realized, was needed to be underpinned by some certain things that weren't about innovation themselves, but were really important for providing a framework where innovation could happen. So one was being clear about the propriety and ethics standards that we were going to apply to innovative practices, because people wanted the confidence that actually in innovating, and particularly where it involves, use of data, that they had a kind of framework that would allow them to make the right decisions without sort of going into unethical areas. we recognized that there was lots of innovation that was happening at quite a small scale, but people didn't have the network necessarily to be able to spread that right across the government communication service. So we created GCS Connect, which is a network where there are innovation forums and hubs, usually by communications discipline, and people can just ask for help. They can sort of say on the internal comms hub, look, I'm thinking about digital display screens in the foyer of our building. Does anyone have experience of that? And could they give me any advice? So trying to kind of not do central innovation, but just really help people to continuously improve. And then finally, at GCS Advance, which is our learning and development program, we realized that actually innovation, there's parts of innovation that are about skills, having the confidence and skills to innovate. And so we introduced new modules on AI, on digital data and insight, and on how to create and foster innovation for our leadership. On AI in particular, we recognized, although the strategy was published in May 22, it became very clear quite early on that AI was an area of great potential that was developing really quickly. And so I just wanted to kind of give you a sense at a kind of high level of how did we go about sort of taking that forward and working out how we adopted it. And we started off by producing something that just made predictions. What do the best people in the communications industry, inside and outside governments, think is going to happen in new tech, new practices, new comms techniques? And which of those do we think are most relevant and most impactful for government comms? Then we took that and said, right, now we need to set out some ambitions. We need to hold ourselves to account for actually innovating. So we produced a publication called Innovating with Impact that set out the specific things we were going to do in response to that report. Then we realized that one of the big barriers to adoption was that people didn't feel confident that we had the right frameworks for that ethical innovation and safeguards. So we produced those. And then we developed some principles specific to individual tools about the safe use. What are the do's and don'ts? What should people be doing? What shouldn't they? And we've made all of that publicly available, so it's completely transparent. Other people can learn from it, but also the public can understand exactly what we are and aren't doing and hold us to account if they feel that we're using these tools in the wrong way. And finally, there are the tools themselves, Assist being our secure AI tool that Amanda will talk through in a minute. I just want to, before I hand over to Amanda, pick two specific examples that came through this process. There's 5 up here, but I'd much rather leave time for questions at the end than go through all of them. The first one, DHSC and the use of audio mob. This is something that came specifically through our Innovation Hub work, trying to identify the best external innovation. And we got a pitch in 15 minutes from a company that had developed in-game advertising for mobile phones. So when people are kind of scrolling, playing on a game on their mobile phone, what Audio Mob will do as an opt-in level, so they can opt in and they get certain rewards for opting in, it will then serve them audio ads. You can keep playing while you're listening to the ad, but you have to listen to the ad. It tells if you've turned the volume down or you're just skipping through. And we thought it was just a really interesting and innovative approach, almost kind of like radio ads, but for the modern era. So we thought, well, let's test it and see if it works. We tested it in 2 campaigns, the DHSC winter vaccines campaign and an MHCLG campaign around social housing. And for the winter vaccine last year, the Audio Mob advert was the most successful advert in terms of people taking action after paid-for search. It had 19 times higher performance than the industry advert and was the most effective placement. So we're now looking at, well, what do we understand about where that works and where it doesn't, and how can we scale it to deliver more impact at lower cost? The second one was one that didn't come centrally, and I wanted just to use this to illustrate that actually if we can get people thinking in a different way and being open to trying different things. So this was one of the things that came through the 10% Innovation Fund. So NHS Blood and Transplant is responsible for securing the blood donations that we need for the country. Communications is a really critical part of that. They need to make 4,300 donations every day. And we often see quite high drop-off rates between people registering and then actually donating. So they took a really innovative data-driven approach, which was to link together their internal appointment grid for blood donations to automated advertising, geographically focused, close to where there was space at the donor centre. So you might be walking along the street in Manchester and see a digital bus advert that would say, donations available at these times today, a location 400 metres from here and an arrow pointing in the right direction. So it was live, digital, geographically specific, hyper-local. It reduced costs by 12.5%. It increased bookings by 11% in our larger cities. And ultimately, last year, in the 3 months that it ran, there were 6,684 additional life-saving blood transfusions as a result of that approach. So I think it's such a great example. If you're reading the Times editorial today saying, why do we have so many government communicators? This is the kind of work that great government communications can do. But in order to do it in a modern setting, we need to continue to innovate and change. So I'm going to hand over to Amanda to take you through, I think, the thing that I'm proudest of. Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you, Simon. So just before we jump in and show you our AI tool, I want to take a moment as well to speak about the team and demystify it a bit and just bring it a bit closer. This is the team that I lead, the Applied Data and Insights team in the Central Government Communication Service. We're quite a sensibly small team, but we have a wide range of skills within the team. So we have everything from social sciences to behavioral science, data science, and also some innovation roles. Now, the innovation roles weren't always there. It was very much in the time that Simon spoke about, when we were creating that ecosystem of innovation and thinking about what do we need to be able to really drive this through the wider organization throughout government departments and ALBs. And an important aspect as well is we were going through a really major organizational restructure at the time, where we were reducing the headcount centrally by 55%. And despite this, we really saw that it's going to be essential to our strategy to really focus on innovation as a driver for growth and improvement within the GCS. So we created just a few roles of innovation and placed them in the Applied Data and Insights team to make sure that they were part as well of that kind of multidisciplinary and diverse set of roles that we have in the center. And we work as well a lot with other teams across the center, so with some of the skills, the teams developing skills and lots of different teams. So it's very much been the approach that we've taken within the team. Just briefly setting out, Simon mentioned GCS Assist. So GCS Assist is a private and secure conversational AI tool that's created bespokely for the government communication and the government communicators across the civil service. Some of the key things that we know has been successful and sort of key unique selling points for Assist, I would say are the three things we see here. So first of all, we realized quite early on, as we were testing and piloting this kind of LLM for comms, that one of the key barriers, one of the key things that are difficult when you start using large language models, that kind of technology, is knowing how to interact with it to get the best out of it, doing that kind of prompt engineering, it's called. So we work together with colleagues within the communication profession to identify 50 different, we have up to 50 different use cases of things that our colleagues do often, where we have been working with them to develop those into like really sort of complex prompts, which can then be utilized over and over, and really make it easier for our colleagues to be able to use the tool. Secondly, the big advantage in a way that we have at the center is that we as a profession set the professional standards. And so we have, just like you might have within your professions, you have professional standards for different things. We have one for how to do a communications plan, best practice, or how to evaluate communications really well. So by incorporating that, when people engage with the tool, the responses you get will follow best practice, so that you can really build on that quickly, and it's incorporated, and it improves that quality of output. And then finally, it was really important that we had something that was safe and secure. So very early on, we made sure that the technology behind was approved for use of official sensitive. In particular, as you can imagine, a lot of government communications is going to be off-sen until it's in the public domain. So let's see. So we were going to do a live demo. Unfortunately, the tech here doesn't allow for me to kind of have that. So we recorded a video instead. So let me see if I can speak to this. So what we see here is just the beginning. When you log in as a user, you're going to see this area, which is the area of pre-built prompts. They're in categories, and here we're going to choose the crisis communications as a demo. Within there, we have a few different options. Here we're going to show demo one that's about creating a crisis communications plan. You can upload your own documents or use, as I said, the pre-built standards that are that tick box where you can include or exclude it if you want. This is the box where the user will input, and it doesn't require a lot from the user. Here we're mainly setting out that we want to create it for a power outage and what department is going to be leading it. And what you see here, this is where the real magic happens. This is that long pre-built prompt that we've been developing and refining and making it really, really bringing in all that best practice so that that then combines with the user prompt. So when we hit submit, what happens in the background? Well, it combines that best practice standards, the pre-built prompt, together with the user input, and it sends that off to one of the frontier large language models. Currently, we're using Claude 3.7, but it's been designed so that we can switch that out if we have a different use case or something changes in the market. And as we see here, it starts to respond and produce quite detailed outputs about following the principles of the best practice STOP framework, which is for crisis communications. So whilst this produces, I just want to make a few things. I think one of the things we see about pre-built prompts, especially we do a lot of user research, is that pre-built prompts are really one of those things that new users lean on a lot. So it's definitely one of those features that's valued. Secondly, we realized very early on, and as Simon said, as part of our innovation ecosystem, that training was really, really important. So we made it a mandatory step before you get access to GCS Assist to take a short training course on AI for comms. I think it was an hour, and now we have it down to 40 minutes. But it really, really just explains in simple terms what is generative AI, what is it good at, also what is it not good at, and importantly, what are your responsibilities as a civil servant when it comes to using the output. And we're very clear that Assist produces first drafts. This should not be used as a decision-making tool. You as an official need to own it. You're going to fact-check it. You're going to control it. But it gives you a really good basis to start from and sort of supercharges you up to that level where you can have something to work with and don't have to have that empty page syndrome, so to speak. As we see here, I think we've just finished getting out our first draft for crisis comms, and for transparency, we show clearly at the end what documents have been used to produce this. So we see the modern communication operating model. And then we really encouraged our users as well to continue the conversation, to refine how they use it. They can ask for it to build out a specific section or brainstorm, or as here, ask it to summarize it in 250 words. You might want to have a cover letter that you can then edit and kind of summarize it for your peers. I think crisis communication in particular has been a very fruitful area where we have been working together with communicators to support that work. And we worked together with the kind of community of crisis communications professionals to really support driving up communications plans for the National Register of Risks, I think it is. And yeah, on average, they saved basically what would have taken months to do. We were able to produce in 4 weeks, saving 150 hours of self-estimated kind of time. And it's been a fantastic area as a use case. But this is just one. We have identified over 100 different use cases that Assist can be used for. And it's really kind of a multifaceted tool in that sense. So let's see, what do our users say? Well, as I mentioned, we do a lot of user research. I realize that the slide has been cut, but that's fine. We can touch on the top ones. So in terms of Net Promoter Score, that's basically a measure of, have you ever been asked, would you recommend this to a friend or a colleague? So basically, most of our users would warmly recommend this to a friend or a colleague. We see that there's a lot of time savings. So most of our users save about 3 hours each week. There are some power users that save up to 7 hours a week. And as well, as I said, about first quality. It's been really important, that work we're doing on the pre-built prompts and the standards, to the point where 69% of our users say that what they get, all or most of the time, is of high quality that they can work with and continue. So one of the key things then has been kind of how did we get there? How did we not just drive this through? And from the very beginning, when we were thinking about this, as Simon said, this is within the bigger picture of an innovation ecosystem. We also knew that it's not enough to just build a really brilliant digital tool. You also need people to use it, and to use it well, to be able to multiply the positive benefits that it can bring. So using the fantastic talent that we have in the Applied Data and Insights team, and in particular behavioral science, we worked really multidisciplinary to consider and take a user-centered approach. Not so much like in parallel with developing the tool, to think about how do we take people with us? How can we think about it from a behavioral science point of view, overcoming what are the barriers to adoption? So in the first place is that when we put it out on newsletters, etc., what are the motivators that help people actually sign up, to take time to do the training, to sign up for the first time, and then actually interact and use with it, right? So we worked a lot in understanding that bit and see how we can support people, and in particular, looking at the totality of kind of the demographics of our user base, so that we've been very keen to consider in particular users that might have had initially low confidence in AI, so that we're not just getting the evangelists with us from the beginning, but really thinking about how do we bring everyone with us. And then secondly, focusing a lot on the sustain part. So once you have logged in once, how can we then support you to keep doing that, to keep thinking, wait a minute, I could do this differently. I can do this faster a different way. And then finally, the final phase is about optimization. That's that bit about using it well. And also in particular, if we think about the scale, right? When we have lots of users, the risk of unintended consequences grows with the number of users. So the approach we've taken is to really consider what are the potential unintended consequences, mitigate them before they happen, and turn them into ways to optimize the use of the tool so it doesn't go wrong. So I'm really pleased to say we set ourselves a bit of a moonshot target at the beginning of the fiscal year. And mind you, we didn't actually have a working product at all by then, that we would reach, I think, over half of all our membership. And I'm very, very proud to say that by a few weeks ago, we reached that target of 3,500 members signed up to assist. And most importantly as well, like through user research, we're seeing that on average, people are saving almost 3 hours a week using this tool. And that equates to, at the current usage, over 5 million in productivity savings. And importantly as well, as we said in the sustain, it's not just about the once, it's about that sustained use. It's about remembering and thinking, oh, I can use this again and again, or even trying it for something new that you haven't tried it. And that is also growing. We see now we have 11,000 weekly queries, and that's growing. So the final slide, and I think it's always nice to see raw data. This is literally, the number of logins to the tool in the 7 days. We can even see that we had some passionate users over Christmas that were using the tool. And this does not include the development team, I must say. So these are actual real users. And we see, the growth of the tool steady as we're working both on meeting users' needs and thinking about how we can bring everyone with us. And a stat that's not on here, but we've seen a growth of 23% of our users that didn't feel confident about AI before, that now feel really confident about AI. So that concludes our presentation. We wanted to leave time for questions, so please feel free for anything that Simon's spoken about or myself. Thanks.
Right, questions. I think there's some mics. We've got a few people down here.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Sarah. I am a digital communications manager at Security Industry Authority. Thank you so much for Assist. First of all, it's a brilliant tool. I think our audience have been using it would agree with me. My question was more around that since I work for a relatively small public body, and I don't know how many people would relate to this, is that we feel that we can definitely benefit a lot from Assist because we have relatively smaller teams. We need to wear multiple hats during the day, and Assist is brilliant. However, in my usage, in my experience of Assist, what I felt is that there's a little bit of a misalignment on an organization level of what can be used in AI or not. There's this level of fear where we have been asked from our data and privacy teams to not choose Assist at all, or I've been asked to, for example, use it for a month and then make a record of every prompt I've put in and record it and feed it back to them so they can look at it, which basically defies the purpose of having an efficient Assist tool. I was one of the people who was working over Christmas, by the way, so I was using it.
Wonderful.
So I just wanted to quickly check, what is the opportunity here? I know it's not really GCS's job to reach out to the rest of the teams and convince them, but we could use some sort of support. Is there some work there? Are there any opportunities where we could sort of signpost people to GCS or have more of these sessions where they can attend?
Thank you for your question. Thank you. So yeah, I mean, we are, as you saw, we're quite a small team, but we definitely have been engaging with the kind of digital teams in organizations sometimes that have wanted assurances of the kind of security features that we built in and how that's done. So in terms of that, we're happy to engage with them to see how we can reassure them about the safety and security. It's gone through everything. So we're, I think, the first tool that's gone through almost all stages of digital assurance, so the GDS process. So we're currently in public beta, and we're going to be going through the live assessment in a few weeks, actually. So we've definitely followed all the best practice, and we're very happy to engage to give that reassurance.
I'm going to say how great it is when you actually meet a real person that's using Assist, and I kind of then have so much more confidence that it's not just like data on a chart. People are actually really using this. Do you want to go there?
Sorry. Excuse me.
Hi, thank you. Brilliant presentation. Thanks for that. I'm Ian Farrow. I'm from Westco, which is an agency owned by Westminster City Council. Some of my ex-members of staff work for you, I believe. Yeah. Really great stuff. I'm just I suppose my first thing is, Could you share some of this with local government, or are there plans to do that? And I'd love to help you with that if that's at all possible. Also, in the early part of your presentation about segmentation of audiences, things move so quickly. I'm just wondering how you keep ahead of the curve in terms of synthetic populations on segmentation, for example. Think about Ben Warner's stuff in terms of electric twin. Thanks.
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, the way to keep ahead of it, I think, is we're still doing all of the Innovation Hub work. So yesterday morning, we started the week with a presentation from a company in Singapore called Scream, who are doing some really interesting audience segmentation and AI work. We're actually seeing Ben Warner and Electric Twin next week to think about synthetic polling and data. But you're right. I mean, it just is moving so quickly all the time that there's an element to which we need to be much more confident just having a very quick cycle of testing, learning, being okay with saying, do you know what, we thought this might be a really positive and interesting area, but we just need to stop it because it's not right for us, and then going again. And I think that is difficult in government, because particularly when you are spending public money on something, there is an expectation that it delivers, and that can't be the world that we're in. We need to look at the totality of this. I mean, the 10% innovation funding, the idea came specifically from the fact that I asked our media buying agency, like, what do McDonald's and Unilever do to make sure that they're kind of staying ahead of new technology and trends? And they said that this is what they do. They have a proportion of money where they say, do you know what? This year, we may end up being less effective and less efficient, and some of this money may end up being wasted because it won't work. But we are absolutely confident over a 3 to 5 year period, we're going to be able to drive much more efficiency and effectiveness through innovating and experimenting than we will if we don't do anything. Yeah.
Hi, Sophie Barber here from Ministry of Justice campaigns team. I would say that we've got... Hello?
Yeah.
I'd say we've got quite...
Oh.
Around some of the barriers that we find we come up against most is actually with other teams, maybe policy or other areas. I wondered if you have any tips on kind of how to overcome those barriers and really show that innovation is worthwhile investing in with other teams.
So the question was about sometimes the barriers are with other teams that are not innovating as quickly. So yeah, and actually I visited MOJ very recently and I saw some great innovation there. So thank you for everything that you're doing on that. I think like one of the things that we actually need to do, one of the innovations that perhaps is most difficult culturally to the way that we work, is joining up much more. So part of the, we didn't talk about it in here, but one of the innovations we've brought through recently is changing the way that government communications campaigns are funded, so that where there is a kind of standalone, very clear departmental campaign, prison and probation officer recruitment in MOJ would be a really good example. That doesn't need to be joined up with other organizations. But where we are trying to tackle something where the policy responsibility sits across multiple departments, so I guess obesity would be a good example of that. DHSC have had a paid-for campaign to try and tackle obesity. DCMS have had a paid-for campaign to try and encourage more active lifestyle and participation in sport. DFT have had a paid-for campaign to try and encourage people to walk or cycle rather than take their car on short journeys. As government, we should just be doing that once. We're speaking to the same audience. So what we've done is say, well, let's recognise that actually probably about a third of what we're doing is genuinely cross-government. Let's use the missions as the kind of foundation for doing that, and let's bring all of the funding together across government for the mission, so that rather than have individual policy teams often having the funding source and trying to drive one particular piece of the jigsaw, we can actually have much more of an audience focus and understand, well, if you're a small business owner, what are all of the things that you're interested in across government? And that's going to be probably 15, 20 different departments. Well, let's bring that together in a simple way. So I think partly, although it seems sort of quite bureaucratic, actually the funding mechanisms are really important for driving the way that we work. Yeah, I don't know where the mic's there.
Hi. Can you tell me what the main difference is between Assist and Copilot? Does Assist, is it any good with data and data analysis? And, sorry, I've got a couple of questions.
Yeah, sure.
And is it free? And how do you get to sign up?
Amanda, you
All
go.
very good questions.
Sorry.
No, a very, very good question. Thank you for that. So we see Assist and tools like Copilot or Gemini, if you're using the Google sort of suite, as very complementary. So they have different strengths in different areas. So I would say a kind of a Copilot is your general purpose AI. It will usually use a less sophisticated model because they provide the kind of the fast one. And it's more for interacting kind of with your general documents or your emails and things like that. Assist, on the other hand, is tailored for government communication. So if you're using Copilot and say create a communications plan, you're going to get something quite generic based on internet advice. Whereas if you use Assist, that's going to be following government communication, best practice that's been developed. You're going to have a really pre-built prompt that will help you extract all of that good stuff in there. It will include behavioral science. It will include like all the best practice. And that across many different areas. So they're very complementary in that sense that you can use them for different things at different times. And I do generally think, if we think about the kind of the future and the AI ecosystem, that we're going to have we're going to have different AI tools for different things. I don't think there's going to be one to rule them all, just like we don't have, one program on our computer that does everything. There's going to be like an ecosystem. I think each of them have a place for different parts. Secondly, your question about how to sign up. So if you are a government communicator, you are in the pool to be able to sign up to GCS Assist. So through the GCS newsletters, for instance, or reaching out to the central team, you just need to do the training and you'll get access within 24 hours to Assist.
And do you want to answer the question about, is it any good with data?
Yes, thank you. So at the moment, we have been really clear on the use cases. So at the moment, it's not focused on that. It is definitely the next area that we're looking at, and the previous question about kind of audience insight and segmentation. So that is the next step and the future vision and the next phase of where we're really seeing Assist going, which is to be able to use what's now the kind of second wave of intelligence in the large language models, of the more reasoning models, to be able to use that kind of power for data analysis and audience insights.
The really exciting prospect for me over the next year is, at the moment, it will produce you a really good communications plan based on our standards, and it will be, it really will be very tailored. So that example you saw absolutely follows our emergency planning guidelines for communications. But what we want to be able to do with the next model is take a communications plan and then put an audience filter on it, so that you could select, I'd like to develop a comms plan, and I'd like it to be for retirees who are struggling with cost of living, and then it will develop you a communications plan that both reflects their concerns, their policy preferences, the platforms that they are receiving their comms on, and I think that could really be very powerful in terms of driving more impact.
I also use Assist, really helpful. Quick question on the future of public sector communications. Do you see AI being used to be more of a pull tool at the point of need? Say you have a life event, like having a child or suffering a bereavement, and using push for different things like behavioural change. Do you see AI is going to be the future to serve the pull side of it?
Yeah, it's probably more of a gov.uk and GDS area, but you might have seen already that they have been experimenting with taking all of the information on gov.uk, I think starting off initially with businesses, wasn't it, to try and see just how good are our large language models at being able to accurately take that information. So I think that absolutely, if you think about the work that GDS has already done on Tell Us Once, for example, on bereavements, where you only have to fill in the form once and then it will contact everybody who needs to know, which I've personally found like a fantastic service at a really difficult time. I think the ability to actually just have an interaction with a large language model is absolutely the sort of thing that gov.uk is looking at. Yeah.
Hi, thank you. My name is Kapil Mehta. I'm head of engineering at UK Export Finance. Really great presentation. Thank you very much for that. And our marketing and comms team, they absolutely make use of this tool. It's fantastic. It's great to see that it's gone through quite a few service assessments. When I reached out to your central team, they came back with a lot of that detail, which was great to see. I guess my question is around your use of the model, the Claude model that you said. You know, what was the reasoning behind using that, I suppose? You mentioned off-sen level. How do you ensure that you can actually use official sensitive level information? And then, sorry, final question. Is this code open source, or is it going to be available open source at some point? Thank you.
Yeah, very happy to take that. I might have missed the first one, trying to remember them, but I'll tackle the off-send to start with. So we have been, oh no, the first one was the model choice.
Yeah.
Yes, so we started off testing different ones. We started off with OpenAI's, and we did some testing with, so in the central team, we have colleagues who specialize in different areas. So we literally sat down and went like, are these any good, basically? And they're comparable. They are comparable. So currently, the choice of Claude is, it's one of the frontier models. It's performing really well. And it's part of the kind of secure enterprise environment where we are building, so that the large language model, I'm getting a bit technical, but the large language model that we're using is within our own kind of virtual secure space. So we're not sending off any of our government data to the providers, to Anthropic in this case. It's all staying within our environment. And so that is one of the main ways that we secure it for official sensitive, because it's not sent off anywhere. Was there a last one question? Yes, open sourcing. Yes, very good question. Yes, we are open sourcing, I think, on Friday this week. So we have we agreed with the service assessment panel that we were holding off a bit to make sure that it was just really as good as it could be, because we're conscious that once we open source it, there's probably going to be quite a lot of cloning. So we just want to provide as much as possible, like as good as possible.
And it's also worth saying that, as well as the technology, we have put up a proposal actually just this week to ministers to say we think we should publish something that talks about that adopt, sustain and optimize model, the people-centered approach to how you scale AI tools. And we're also suggesting putting something forward that looks at how do you really be proactive in identifying and mitigating the human risks of using AI tools, not just the sort of the big risks that often people think about of AI kind of, taking over the world or acting against human interests, but just the sort of the user risks of people taking information. And we're doing lots of work to see how people are using the tool and understanding proactively where are people using it in a way that actually it wasn't intended for, and how do we manage that? Because I think what we realized is that actually optimizing the tool and sort of addressing some of the barriers that stopped people using AI. They're two sides of the same coin. If you can show people that you're proactively thinking about how to use this ethically, then actually it gives people more confidence to use it and to innovate, and hopefully will give those in their organizations who think, oh my God, what are the comms team doing? They're going off and using some AI model, confidence that actually we take this stuff really seriously. And the more we can be transparent about that and the public have an opportunity to scrutinize all of our work, the more likely I think we are to build confidence in the use of AI, not just in government communications, but hopefully more widely as well. I think have we got time for
I think one more question.
One quick one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One quick, yeah.
There's one over here.
Nice.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi.
Obviously, any AI, no matter how intelligent, you're always going to need really good knowledge about your audience, about their needs, about the kind of messaging and communications that's going to land with them. From the point of view of getting that detailed information and understanding of your audience, I'm finding it's particularly challenging with colleagues, internal communications, trying to, they're all surveyed out, they're all incredibly busy, they're all rather jaded when it comes to answering the same kind of questions. Do you have any particular hints and tips in this new, fast-moving world? How can we get people to spend the time to tell us what they need out of the communications we give them?
Yeah, I might just take that actually talking about electric twin that I mentioned very quickly earlier on. So AI's giving us the potential, and we're only exploring this at the moment. It's not something we're using in our tool, but it's giving us the potential to create digital twins which would allow you to do synthetic research. And so I guess the way to think about it is that the AI will either create a digital version of the whole UK population or of a particular audience segment and allow you to do some things in real time that usually you would have to do maybe at least a couple of days research, if not a couple of weeks research. So you could instantly put two versions of your public communications and sort of say, for this audience group, which one of these messages is most likely to resonate, and get an instant poll on it. Or you could have an instant conversation with a focus group about a policy or a press release or an announcement, and see what are the things that resonate and what are the things that you might want to change. And I don't think we're not in a place where we think that's ready to completely replace good quality research and innovation in focus groups, but it definitely is something that we want to test it with an AI route and test it with a real route and just see how they compare. I think speaking to Ipsos Mori about this last week, they were saying actually they see quite a lot of opportunity for both additive work. So you might do 3 focus groups that are real, which would kind of like the numbers we do at the moment, but you might be able to do another 15 and get therefore a kind of stronger data set from the AI. Equally, there might be some audiences that it doesn't work as well with. So if you've got a larger corpus of material, so the whole UK population is probably fairly accurate. Will it be as accurate if we're trying to reach, a certain community in some part of the UK? But actually, what the guy from Ipsos was saying to me last week, there's some audiences it's really difficult to reach, but there's quite a lot of information about them. So if you think of FTSE 100 chief executives or international investors, there's a lot that they speak about things a lot. There's lots of evidence of what their approach would be to something, but it's really difficult to get, almost impossible to get 10 of them in a room in a focus group. So actually that might be an area where it gives you an opportunity to have a conversation with people that you would ordinarily not be able to get in the room.
Yeah, and I think as Simon says, it's that kind of dual approach. We will still always need to base it in the data and sort of validate continually to make sure that those kind of models are up to date. But it does allow us, and in the sense you were talking about, internal comms, I can definitely see a scenario where a people survey can be designed in a way that can form a basis to be able to do more interesting work there.
Great, I think we are just over time, so thank you very much for all your great questions.
Thank you.
And have a great day.